Situated on the edge of Europe, Ireland has been shaped by many outside influences. From the Celts in the 4th century BC to the Anglo-Norman Knights, the new arrivals were seduced by this land and absorbed into its culture, becoming Irish themselves. All this was brutally cut short when in the 17th century, the British decided to colonise the island. Cromwell took land away from the Irish Catholics and gave it to the Scottish Protestants, who were sent to rule the new colony. The majority of the newcomers settled in the 6 counties that opposed Scotland, known today as Ulster. The English prohibited the Catholics from owning land, learning a profession, speaking their language, or playing their music, in the hope of eradicating Catholicism from the country. In revenge, Rome made Protestants who wanted to marry Catholics swear that they would raise their children in the Catholic faith. By the end of the 18th century, few Catholics had bowed to Protestant rule. For 2 centuries, all revolts were suppressed. Disease swept the potato crops, causing terrible famines. Catholics were forced to submit to the new rulers or emigrate. In 1885, when the Irish people were finally given the vote, the landslide victory of those in favour of autonomy caused a shockwave in the Protestant community. Fearful of an uprising, the Protestants sabotaged any attempt at independence and formed the first paramilitary militias. During the First World War, the Irish fought under the British flag in the hope of eventually being awarded their independence. When it wasn't forthcoming, the Irish Republican Army, or IRA, was formed in 1919. After a year and a half of war, the nation finally gained its independence. Then, in 1921, 26 predominantly Catholic counties formed the Republic of Ireland. The 6 mainly Protestant counties of Ulster, in the north of the country, reintegrated with the United Kingdom. From 1968 onwards, Ulster spiralled into a period of hatred and violence between the ruling Protestants and the still widely discriminated against Catholics.
The army said they were fired upon the troops. The army first fired CS gas.
Over the next 26 years, protest marches were held, riots broke out, and civilians were imprisoned, beaten, or killed in the fight for equal rights. Coupled with the enforced presence of the British Army, both sides were left feeling full of anger and bitterness. After the announcement of ceasefires and the handing in of some weapons, first by the IRA in September '94, then by the Protestant paramilitaries in October '94, Ireland entered into a period of hope and renewal. On the 10th of April 1998, following an intense period of negotiations, an agreement was signed by the 2 communities and overwhelmingly supported in a referendum held in both the Republic and Ulster. Today, the question on everybody's lips is whether the Protestant and Catholic communities will succeed in not only living together, but also in forgiving one another. Can peace in Ireland last?
My partner was involved with the IRA going back to 1989. He was arrested. I was 4 weeks pregnant when he was arrested. He was imprisoned for 6 years. I stuck by him till he came out of jail. We had 2 other children and then we went our separate ways. Of being a single mum, I've been a single mum for 13 years. For 13 years. He was charged with 6 counts, I think. He pleaded not guilty, so he got 12 years. But then with the Good Friday Agreement, He was released 2 years earlier. What does he do now? He's unemployed. Haven't got a clue where he lives up the road somewhere. Very rarely sees his kids. Well, the people still feel the exact same way towards the police force, that there's no difference. They're kind of way still monitoring everything that goes on because they are situated above the community and they're watching everything that's going around them. So their privacy is still taken away from them. Well, they're still going into people's houses, raiding them, and for no reason.
Margaret lives in one of the areas from which the IRA recruited a lot of its members during the Troubles. In these neighbourhoods, at least one home in every street has lost a son or daughter.
The reason why these murals are painted is because it's a history of the last 30 years that went on. So it is, and it's more or less, it's a reminder, let us know that these people give up their lives for us.
From 1976 onwards, walls were built throughout Belfast to separate the Catholic areas from the Protestant ones, as well as to protect certain police stations. These ironically named peace lines were later enhanced to measure 9 metres high. The walls were created to prevent gunshots and projectiles being fired into the neighbouring area. They also help prevent hostile incursions. The passages that link the areas are under CCTV surveillance and are closed at night. Any gangs are therefore forced to make a detour of several miles to reach the other side. Despite this, in April 1994, Protestant paramilitaries broke through the wall here, creating a passage from one side to the other. A lady who lived in this street called the police to alert them. They never came.
They'd phoned the local taxi depot place and ordered a taxi to come up to the last number of that house. And when the taxi came up to People's Horn, the fellas were already ambushed about here. So they went over and shot into the car. There was a passenger and the driver. The passenger was killed instantly, so he had 3 to 4 bullets in through him, and the driver was badly injured. The police did nothing about it. So that they knew that there was a gap in the wall. They were notified. They done nothing. There had to have been intelligence going on. There had to have been collusion. Of course there was collusion because the police seen. They were notified. They did nothing, and a young fella was killed. Me personally, myself, would be 100% behind the IRA because they fought for 30 years to where they are today. It's easier for a Protestant to come and live in the Catholic area. Simple reason is people are not bothered what their religion is. But for a Catholic to live in a Protestant area, they couldn't. They would be burnt out. So they don't know the reason why. They just feel intimidated probably by a Catholic. They just don't want Catholics living in the area. That will be hopefully United Ireland, and they don't want that because they want Ireland to stay a Protestant place. They don't want us to have anything, so they don't. They just want us to feel as if we are second-class citizens, where we're not, we're first class. I do have Protestant friends and Protestant cousins and aunts as well, so I do. And my sister's married into a Protestant as well. So my view towards Protestants is no different. I treat them just as if they were just a normal person. They're the same colour of blood as me. I would be fearful of driving the other side of the road into the Shankill area or any part of a Protestant area. Just fear of my life, really. I've never entered into it before. I think it would probably read all over me that I would be a Catholic and they would notice it, so they would, so I would never venture into it, so I wouldn't.
For 2 years, Margaret has been working for Father Wilson. He has lived and preached in this working-class neighbourhood of Belfast for many years, and he has set up several autonomous organisations to help Catholics get training and to take control of their lives. Wilson has encouraged Margaret to develop her skills by retraining as a therapist.
Catholics are still being discriminated against, not to the same extent that they were. Well, due to the situation, the government, the British government, had to bring in laws to penalise discrimination. That has helped. Money was poured into Ireland, was poured into Belfast, was poured into this area, and it didn't do much good because, well, money doesn't. Good government does. Obviously the churches would have a tremendous part to play, but I'm sorry to say I do not believe that they will. I think we must leave the churches out of account entirely. Governments have told the world a completely wrong story of what's happening here. The British government wanted military bases. It wanted control of the Irish economy. Those reasons no longer apply. The mechanisms by which they stayed here, namely dividing the population on religious grounds, those things still remain. Nobody wants a return to war. But if a government continues to frustrate the political process of the people, then a war becomes once again likely, and if it goes on long enough, it becomes inevitable.
The Irish conflict goes beyond simple religious antagonism. It is cultural, political, and even social. Today, Ireland is held hostage by the extremists and paramilitaries from both sides. As a result of the Troubles, these extremists have been able to develop mafia networks involved in drug trafficking, hiding their crimes beneath religious and political covers. It is not in their interests to create or maintain peace, and until they are disarmed, the situation will continue. Less than 20 miles from Belfast, the small towns of Lurgan and Portadown have suffered at the hands of sectarian extremists for 35 years. This Catholic church served to conceal guns and ammunition of the IRA. Several tons of weapons were seized here. Here, this peaceful Protestant church in Drumcree has been at the heart of many riots and assassinations. Garrett is Protestant. He works for Hurt, a charity for victims of violence which counts people from both communities among its members.
In this area, Lurgan, Portadown, Craigavon, there's been over 230 people killed. And if you think of each of those people will have at least 10 family members, you're into a good few thousand people directly impacted. The benefits in the last 10 years that I can see would be there's been less people actually killed during that period. I think the downside is, though, there's been, I think, a rise in hatred in the last 10 years because I think both communities feel that they have lost something. Certainly in the Unionist Protestant community, they would feel that they have saw prisoner releases, they have saw no hope of convictions. There's been something like over 100 IRA killings in this area, in the two towns in the last 30 years. Less than 10% of those have been solved by the police. So people obviously want to try and do something themselves.
To take revenge, the Irish people call on the help of the paramilitaries. The ball is now in their court, not the police's. In an overly armed Northern Ireland, the army and police force live alienated in their bunkers and armoured vehicles. In the two camps, they are prevented from getting to the real authors of crimes. Some of the political leaders in power undermine justice, play at being gang leaders, and organise the demonstrations. They grow wealthy from the trafficking and peace money that they hijack. They don't want reconciliation, as they stand to lose their power.
It became clear after a number of years that Sinn Féin were manipulating the situation in the area. Most of the senior contentious people organising the opposition were linked to Sinn Féin. And I think they had a vested reason in community conflict because they could portray themselves as the defenders of their community. I think, though, there's a feeling of goodwill at this point in time, though, in the Protestant community towards both the Republic of Ireland and the Catholic community. I think they really want to see and resolve the situation. But I think they don't see the need for guns under the table for any political organisation that's in government. And it just won't work. It won't work until there's a separation between the like of Sinn Féin and the IRA, and Sinn Féin legitimise themselves as a genuine political party as opposed to a terrorist organisation. that end won't work. I think the churches opted out during the conflict. They lost the respect of the people, and maybe in both communities, because they weren't seen to be of the people. And they got removed from the violence. They'd become embarrassed by the violence and didn't want to do the hard work on the ground that addressed the problems. It's a difficult time for the future, but I'm still proud to bring my children up here and to live here. My roots are here, and I believe we have a great faith.
This building in East Belfast is home to one of the lodges of the Orange Order. With its 80,000 strong membership, this Masonic order is not only the main Protestant organisation in Northern Ireland, but also a pillar of loyalism to the British Crown. Fraser Agnew is a football coach, journalist and history enthusiast.
Many of those who get involved in the Orange Order get involved because it's a family thing. It's been handed down through generations in the family. My grandfather was an Orange man, and it was natural that I would, because of that family connection, I would drift into the Orange Order. When we had our own storm in Parliament back to 1969, most of those cabinet ministers would have been Orange men, and that was one of the things that nationalists used against them. These people have all a vested interest. They're making their decision in the lodge room and all the rest of it. Orange Lodge meetings always open with the scripture. We always read the Bible. There'll always be a word of prayer, even singing hymns. That would be perfectly normal. And then you would get down to the business. You would deal with the minutes from your last meeting. And you would look at all variety of things. We could discuss the politics of the day. We could discuss a social function that we're organising. We could look at trying to get a band for the next demonstration we're going to have.
Every year, around the 12th of July, the Orange Order organises hundreds of marches in Northern Ireland. These marches commemorate the victory of the Protestant Prince William of Orange over the Catholics in the Battle of Boyne in 1690. During this period of tension between the two communities, Catholics either flee the towns or barricade themselves in their homes. These marches are the favourite meeting point of troublemakers from both camps. The marches can still dissolve into pitched battles when passing through certain sensitive Catholic streets.
Yes, I go marching on the 12th of July, and I have a bowler hat and white gloves.
The Orange marches they are sectarian marches. So they are, because they're either waving something or flagging something, to kind of way to provoke Catholic people. You don't see Catholic marches walking through Protestant estates. It's only more or less them saying, this is our area, we're entitled to walk through a Catholic estate, when we don't impose them by walking through their estates by our marches.
In years gone by, we didn't have the problem with our marches. Roman Catholics enjoyed the spectacle. They came out and watched the parade, and I know that because my neighbours did it, and there was never any difficulty with it. Well, there was a bit of a crack and a bit of banter about the whole thing, but there was never any difficulties with it. But it's this infidel republicanism that we have today that recognises nothing but what comes out of that Republican background.
Just before 12 o'clock, police Land Rovers moved up Drumcree Road, closing off side entrances. They did the same on Garvaghey Road. When locals realised what was happening, they staged a sit-down protest. But soon the RUC moved in and started clearing the protesters off Garvaghey Road. Then 1,300 Portadown Orange men were on the move. The local Drumcree Lodge led the parade down the hill. Their numbers filled this quiet country road. When they turned into Garvaghey Road, police Land Rovers lined the entire route. Residents were kept well back behind the police lines. Marching four abreast, the Orange men were quiet and dignified. There was no music, just a drum marking time. Soon after the Orange men had left the road, the Land Rovers started moving out, but it wasn't long until they were back. Residents' anger spilling over. A van was hijacked and set on fire. A short time later, the police replied with plastic bullets.
You have this hype about, you've got to talk. Why won't you talk to these residents groups? And you're expected to talk to someone who's been put forward by Provisional Sinn Féin with a background in the IRA, and as we know from the past experience, someone who was guilty of intimidating Protestants out of their homes. And you're there then you're forced to talk to him to find out why you can walk down the street past your old home because he's now living in the house that you used to live in. So Republicans do have a very narrow view of the whole marching scene. They don't understand our history or culture. They just see us as someone that are getting in their way of some sort of an All-Ireland Republic that they're never going to see. It's not going to happen, certainly not in the way that they want it to happen. I recognise their right to worship and do the things that they do, and all I ask is that they give me the same rights that I give them, and to live with me in this society where we can have the freedom to do the things that we want to do within the law. We did it in the past, we can do it again.
Through that door.
Drums and 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 drum drum drum. Drum dare dum duff dum doo dum, eagle drum a derry drum a diller drum a doom. Drum fa dum flew drum fin dum, giving drum a pipey drum a follow drum a gee. Jigging and a reeling and a paradiddle flamadiddle, pitter patter puffin diddly dee. Bucking and a leppin' and a different dance steppin' and a drum a candy says by the sea. Drums and 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 drum drum. The big drum over here is called a lambeg drum, and that would be mainly associated with the Protestant and Unionist people here in Northern Ireland. And the small drum, the bodhrán, would be mainly associated with Catholic and Nationalist people. So back in 1992 we got the idea of doing something with both drums together, something that would give respect to both traditions.
We were very aware at the start of the sensitivities around bringing these two symbols together. One of the workshops we did was in an Orange Hall. They expressed the opinion that to see the bodhrán in that setting and to be so close to it made them feel uncomfortable. And we also would have experienced the same thing from nationalist or Catholic people being so close to the lambeg.
The people who were wary about the lambeg and the bodhrán, you know, that represented something that wasn't them, but usually once they heard what we did with it, it became all right, you know. So if the music was good, if people were enjoying it, that seemed to dissipate all the anxieties that people would have. You know.
Myself coming from the Protestant tradition, I never heard Irish traditional music really until I became part of this band, whereas with Dolores, it's so much a part of Dolores' life from she was a child.
The band represents all of the communities in Northern Ireland. We have Protestants and Catholics and we're all playing together. Our own religions has never been an issue for us at all. You know, we're all aware of it, and we talk about it and we laugh about it and we joke about it, but it's never ever been an issue for any of us.
When you travel the world and you see Northern Ireland from another perspective, the difficulties and the differences we have here are really small, you know, compared to what we have in common. As we talk about that we represent the communities in Northern Ireland, we don't. We represent two of the communities in Northern Ireland. There are a huge number of different communities in this country. You have the Indian community, you have an African community, you have an Asian community, you know. And the idea was that if you could get the music to work in harmony, maybe somewhere down the line the people could live in harmony and it could work in a sense. And Roy was talking about it earlier on. We kind of looked at ourselves very much as a musical metaphor for what was happening in the country.
It's here, 10 miles south of Dublin, in the peaceful surroundings of Glencree, that many of the initial peace talks between Republicans and Loyalists were held. The Glencree Centre organises many workshops, like this one, for a group of victims of sectarian violence. The notions of forgiveness, peace and reconciliation are at the centre of the discussion.
Paramilitary or a former prisoner or whatever, it's not it's not uncommon that you go to either a church group or a community group or something and it will be mixed. That's not uncommon.
I know that when I speak in this group that there's not going to be a paramilitary that lives around the corner from me listening to what I'm saying, so I don't have to fear being at home. I mean, there's real fear out there of if you say something and that it comes back on you. So I'm from Northern Ireland. What this group gave me was from Derry, Northern Ireland, and I grew up with the Troubles. I grew up with the war, and I lived in a nationalist area. My brother-in-law was killed by an IRA bomb. He was taken from the house and they put him and tied him into a van. They killed him by remote control, him and 5 soldiers. I was held hostage as well with my sister and the family on that night. Because I only seen their eyes at that night, I spent many years looking in people's eyes when I met them out or when I met them somewhere thinking, was it you or was it you or was it you? People are feeling it's safe now to actually talk about what happened. I mean, the amount of intimidation that people suffered, people were silenced, and it's only now that they're starting to feel, oh, maybe we can talk. But then when the peace process is being threatened again, people are shutting up again. They're saying, oh, we might be going back to, a troubled times again. So it's difficult for me to look at certain people in the political arena and see the power they have and think that they once had a gun in their hand and were very cruel to their own people and to others.
We are not going to get to a system of reconciliation if we're constantly talking to those we know. So we do need to talk to those who are on the other side, those who are paramilitaries, those who are state forces, those who may have been responsible for the events that the victim survivors are here for. They want to ask them, how did you get involved in this? Why did you do what you did? Why was my husband picked as a target? They have initial questions that they want to ask. We can hope for nothing more, that each will see the human side and the human face of the other.
I went back home and I talked to my boys.
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand. He said, well, how can you talk to these people? And I'm trying to explain to them, well, that's why I'm talking to these people. My son is now a face as far as that guy's concerned. Maybe he'll never shoot as a soldier again.
My son was killed in Northern Ireland. He was blown up. He was a soldier. My son was killed by the IRA, but there were people in there whose children were killed by British soldiers. So the pain was the same. So you learned a different perspective, and you learned to try to understand what was going on in Ireland. An Irish person I didn't know was, to me, like a suspect. He's Irish, he could be IRA. This one of the guys, did he kill my son? But when I came here and met Irish people here in Glencree, and they were same as me. We're all human beings, we hurt. Lady whose daughter was killed by a British soldier, I related to her because she lost a daughter. So I learned that they weren't enemies. I don't have the same bitterness and hatred that I had before. I don't have forgiveness. There's no way I'll ever have forgiveness. And I understand a little bit more.
Today in Ireland, there are many places like Glencree where people can go to share their experiences. In 45 years of conflict, close to 10,000 people have been killed or injured in the British Isles in sectarian attacks. If even a few of the victims and their families take part in one of these workshops, they will be taking the spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness home with them. Glencree has also created workshops geared towards politicians and the police force, as well as sessions for former paramilitaries and activists. The principle is to not exclude anyone, regardless of their opinions or their personal history, in order to give the peace process a chance. But how does somebody become a paramilitary in the first place?
When I became heavily involved, I was quite naive. The reality was that I was sectarian, and I had this belief that because there were 100,000 people at the funeral of Bobby Sands in West Belfast, that to me they were all legitimate targets. But that gave me the excuse or the legitimacy to get involved in becoming an active UVF gunman. I don't think, looking back on it, that I could justify my actions. But I do believe that if I hadn't done what I'd done, that Britain would have probably got out the back door. Because I think that's what they're trying to do now.
And yet Mrs. Thatcher tells us that that republic must have some say in our province. We say never, 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 never. We are saying something more. We are prepared to lay down our lives rather than surrender.
I went to church as a teenager, and I went to Ian Paisley's church. And Ian Paisley was a preacher and a politician, and I hung on every word he said. When I went to Ian Paisley's rallies, I often came away believing that when I was old enough that I should join the ranks of the UVF. Ian Paisley would probably tell you that no, he never called for anybody to join. But sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. I had a son born while I was in prison. He was born on the 3rd of February, 1997. And he died 2 days later while I was in prison. And it was only when I experienced that loss of my own son that I began to realise, how destructive the conflict had been and the part I played in it. I had lived with the knowledge that I had taken life and hadn't really given a lot of thought to the families that had to live without a father. And it made me in many ways more committed to doing something positive on my release. Politicians can turn around and say, we delivered the peace, we done this and we done that. But the reality is on the ground, ex-prisoners who did have a destructive role to play were the people that made the first steps and took the real risks in reaching out the hand. And without that, we wouldn't have a peace process. But even 10 years ago, if you'd have told me that I would have been working side by side with Republicans and been comfortable with it, I wouldn't have believed you.
I'm a northern man from a northern...
Today, Noel, a Protestant, and Brian, a Catholic, coordinate a network of former activists and prisoners from communities on either side of the divide. The members of this network are permanently on standby. If violence flares up, they alert each other with the help of mobile phones dedicated to the purpose.
The reason there's a peace wall here is because of the violence that went on for 30 years and more. What we're attempting to do is to take down the walls that are in people's minds.
The position I'm in is merely like nearly a mechanism, to facilitate the dialogue between, say, residents in the Clonard area just across here with residents from the Shankill and Loyalist areas. 10 o'clock last Tuesday. There was a group of maybe 30 or 40 young people, maybe aged 15 to 16, were coming down from the Shankill towards the gates, and at this stage the gates were open, you know. So a local taxi driver telephoned one of our mobile phone holders because the bar beside us was being attacked by stones. So our mobile phone holders came down, and by the time I came down, the gates were starting to close. So obviously the police were aware of the incident and started closing the gates to keep the group over on that side of the interface. So we contacted the other mobile phone holders on that side of the interface, who were able to come down and start to move the crowd that had gathered at that side of the interface on. In years previous, you know, if that situation wasn't diffused and you started having stones and bottles thrown over each side, and you start getting houses damaged on each side of the interface, and then crowds would gather and older members of the community would become present, and you could have had a riot that lasts for 2 or 3 days, weeks maybe. But you look at the statistics, you know, and child poverty is exactly the same on each side of the interface. Unemployment is the same. The education attainment are equally poor, you know. So there are more things that unite us, you know, than divide us.
I think the wall needs to be torn down someday. I think it needs to happen if our children's children are going to live in something like normality. And I don't think that this is normal. But I think it'll only happen when the people that live here in the shadows of the wall have enough confidence in each other's communities.
What can priests and ministers do within their parishes to unify these two communities? In this county that borders the two countries, many Protestants preferred to leave than suffer the frequent and violent incursions of the IRA. One might anticipate that the situation for the remaining Protestant minority in the small town of Rostrevor would be difficult. The Anglican minister, Sam Jones, left his predominantly Protestant North Belfast parish for this 95% Catholic stronghold.
I think when you're moving from a mainly Protestant community to a majority Catholic community, there's always that little bit of apprehension and doubt. I don't feel any strangeness, any tension, any doubt, any fear between either one of the communities. Everybody seems so relaxed and so easy going and working together. This is one of the things probably that I looked for, was the tension between it, but there is none of that. I've always said to my own people that there's nothing to fear. The fear is within yourself. And so therefore, that is probably where we, the clergy, could be more positive. We can't take the role of politicians, but we can take the role of bringing people together more and sharing together more.
In keeping with the European trends of the past few years, the Church in Ireland is steadily losing both influence and followers. Today, Sam and his wife Kate are taking up an invitation. Every fortnight they pay a visit to their Catholic neighbours in the new monastery at Rostrevor. The monastery was created by 5 Benedictine monks who came over from France. At their head is Mark Ephraim, an Irishman by birth, who spent the majority of his priesthood in France.
Good to see you, Father. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you again.
Au cours de l'année, ça nous arrive d'organiser des semaines de prière où nous allons d'une église à l'autre chaque soir. On commence peut-être, par exemple, chez les anglicans le lundi, le mardi on va se trouver chez les presbytériens, le mercredi chez les méthodistes, le jeudi chez les catholiques, et peut-être le dernier jour on va se retrouver ici au monastère. L'Église catholique vit actuellement en Irlande et doit vivre encore une grande purification. Je crois qu'une tentation pour les hommes d'Église, c'est de dire que ce n'est pas un conflit religieux. Mais n'empêche, il y a une dimension religieuse au conflit qu'on ne doit pas négliger. Et si on demande aux églises de faire partie de la solution, c'est quand même reconnaître qu'on fait partie du problème.
That conflict and hatred, which appeal to religion and breed on past wounds, be banished like a plague from among us.
For the unity of Christians for whom Christ died, let us pray to the Lord. Je crois profondément à la possibilité de pardonner. Je crois que le pardon n'est pas facile. Mais je crois que le vrai défi pour nous tous, et tous nous avons été blessés dans ce conflit, c'est de ne pas faire miroir avec l'ennemi, de ne pas devenir ennemi à notre tour.
Since the return to relative normality, the number of mixed couples has risen sharply. However, very few accept to speak openly in front of the cameras. William is Protestant and Anne is Catholic. Together, they created NEMA, the Northern Ireland Mixed Marriage Association. They've brought up 3 of their 6 children as Catholics and 3 as Protestants.
Our children have stayed Catholic or have stayed Protestant. The ones that are Catholic and the ones that are Protestant have stayed so. What we have perhaps passed on to them is that the minutiae of the divisions are much smaller than the reality of what Christianity is all about.
We have over the years now got a very much different atmosphere with regard to mixed marriages, though some families would be very much against it. And there's a sort of attitude in Catholic circles that, the Protestants, they're nice, but they're not real Christians, and if they know what Catholicism is about, it'll be all right. It was also being regarded as a Roman Catholic as Antichrist and a worshipper of idols. The churches have moved considerably in the way in which they've opened up towards mixed marriages. But there are people within the churches who would still rather stay with the old rules. It's still in the gift of the priest and to say, we will give you a dispensation to marry, or a dispensation from form to marry in a Protestant church. Some people in mixed marriages really don't bother about both traditions. They go for one or the other, or neither. And that's been one of the ways in which mixed marriages people in Northern Ireland have worked. They've just not been anything. And in Northern Ireland that's very difficult because you've got to be something. And there were a lot of people who are living in Catholic areas who are called Catholics because that's where they live, because that's the label they've got, and they go to the Catholic school because that's the label they've got. But they're not really practicing Catholics. And so that's a problem because they get all the brickbats of being a Catholic if they go anywhere else without getting very many of the benefits. And we are still having people ringing us for help and support in the Mixed Marriage Association who are in very difficult situations and got big family problems of, the brothers muscle in and say you can't go out with him. It's the paramilitaries. The fear is about the paramilitaries. And people have been shot and people have been intimidated out of their houses. I mean, today people are being intimidated out of their houses because they're in mixed marriages.
There are areas of Belfast that you can choose to live in. They're not cheap areas where there is no sectarianism and where you can live without anybody being bothered about who you are.
When you have got the voting going the way that it voted the last time, where you have the Sinn Féin and the DUP being the biggest groups, and the people in the middle become very despairing. Now they keep on going, and they keep on putting up schools, and they keep on doing their cross-community work, and they keep on standing up to the paramilitaries as best they can. But at the end of the day, we seem to have more people on the extreme in Northern Ireland than we do in the middle.
If you live in a segregated society, and Northern Ireland's very segregated, where the majority of the population live in their own areas, go to their own schools, and there are only 6% of children in Northern Ireland in integrated schools, it's very easy to be suspicious or even feel hostile. If instead of that you're actually meeting the other side on a daily basis, learning together with them, exploring together the issues which divide, then obviously your young people are getting a much broader experience and a much deeper understanding of conflict and the various ways in which conflict can be addressed. Our students are wonderful because although they're coming from areas where there are walls between them and their friends who they meet in school, and where there has frequently been actual violence, we don't have a problem with sectarianism in school.
Both pupils at Hazelwood, Justine, a Protestant, and Laura, a Catholic, have been friends since their early childhood.
I've known Laura since nursery because we both went to the same integrated nursery and then primary school, and it hasn't really been a problem because both our parents believe in the integrated education. Laura was talking about her communion and all, and I went to that, and with our families it's not really a problem, like what religion you are. I have visited Laura's area where she lives, but my family haven't been worried because they're really friendly with Laura's mum and dad as well, and our areas wouldn't be really bad for fighting and things because of religion. If it hadn't come up in conversation, I honestly wouldn't know who was Catholic and who was Protestant because I don't think there's any difference.
We have created special opportunities for the children to speak about contentious issues. We have what we call a Speak Your Piece Day, and this is a day where the students, they don't wear school uniform, and they're coming in and they're talking about the signs and symbols that are important to them. So you can go into a group and have all the contentious flags which are used as weapons out on the streets. You can have children sitting around saying, well, this is important in my area because, and everyone listening. So the notion of integrated education is more generally accepted. So it's not so strange for children to get on a bus and come away to school as opposed to going to the local segregated school. But I think that families still are challenged about their choice of schools.
My mum's really for integrated education, and whenever I was in first year here, I had to, because my church wouldn't let me make my confirmation, I had to go with the school here, and there was only a few of us got to do it together because our church was really against integrated education, didn't think it was right and didn't think it was good enough. But now, like, they've fought for it and they've got it so that the kids can do it in P7 with all the other Catholics.
The Catholic Church does not approve of its parents sending children to integrated schools. They feel that their Catholic children should be in Catholic schools.
The Catholic Church is evolving slowly. One ray of hope is that the priests are beginning to recognise the benefits of an integrated system. But where does this leave the child of a mixed couple?
Whether you go to a Catholic maintained school or Protestant maintained school, you're brought up under their teachings. So it is. The religion you're taught is all taught through their eyes, and it's the politics and the morals and the values. It's all separated, and the morals would be more or less imposed on you, so they would. Whereas when you're in an integrated school, it would be it's open to your own interpretation. And people would ask me if I'm Protestant Catholic. I don't define myself by religion. As far as religion to me is, religion doesn't really exist. My mother would be from a predominantly Republican area, and my father would be from the other side of the coin. He'd be from a predominantly loyalist area. So the marching season itself, when it comes around, you're constricted in where you can go, and the atmosphere changes. But you just have to be careful and be intelligent where you go and what you're saying, who you're with.
As regards to the hope, I think there's always hope. I think my experience over the last 7 or 8 years leads me to believe that there are enough genuine people on both sides that want to move forward, that don't want to go back to the way it was. And I'm certainly one of those that don't want to go back the way it was.
I just feel there's so much healing to be done before we can really see the benefits of a free and open society. I am optimistic, but I think it's going to take years.
At the moment, I think we're in an increasingly difficult situation here. And for people who are in the middle, who are working together, who are in mixed marriages, who are trying to create shared space, shared institutions, we've got to go on. And those shared institutions will persevere and prevail. But there will always be people who want nothing of it. They want their own space, and they want themselves to be the dominant people.